This episode of Hanging in My Tree is about my third great-grandfather, Christoph Ludwig August Lange. It is the story of a man who immigrated from Germany, or perhaps technically Denmark, to the Australian goldfields in the gold rush, and who ultimately died in tragic circumstances. For those of you that have watched earlier episodes, Christoph is the grandfather of Cecil Henry Lange. There is not a lot of information available for Christoph, or Ludwig as he is also known, but the little information we have is worth sharing. The information in the family tree at ancestry.com about Christoph is inconsistent, and I've only relied on information that I could tie back to a known source. We do know that Christoph had at least one brother, Heinrich Dietrich Lange. Heinrich was also a miner who immigrated to Australia, and he was a few years older than Christoph. Christoph's parents are recorded as Peter Heinrich Lange, Charlotte Lange née Boyer, or Anna Caroline Elizabeth Lange née Bolek. Charlotte Boyer is what was recorded on Christoph's death certificate. However, a site, www.rootdigger.de, which is a detailed list of all people who immigrated from Schleswig-Holstein by a man who still resides in the area, records Christoph's mother's name as Anna Caroline Elizabeth Lange née Bolek. These records show that Christoph, using the name Ludwig, and his brother both immigrated to Australia. However, there is no indication of when they immigrated. This website also explains the habit of giving a newborn child a double, triple, or even quadruple name, or rather a set of names, was not uncommon in the Schleswig-Holstein area in the 19th century. But in everyday use, a person would only be called and referred to by one name, two at the most, if they were short. And there was no system of choosing of all his names the name one went by. It certainly cannot be said that as a rule the first name in the line was the one in use. The order of the names was no ranking, and the American style of giving names, first name followed by middle name, cannot be compared with the way of our ancestors. There are inconsistent sources as to the date of birth of Christoph. The two official documents that we know definitely relate to Christoph are his naturalisation certificate. On the 3rd of October 1872, he was recorded as being 54 years of age, and his death certificate from Victoria Births, Deaths and Marriages, which says on the 8th of August 1873, he was still recorded as 54 years of age. That puts his birth date around 1818. We also know from his naturalisation certificate and death certificate that he was born in Krempe, now in Germany. I have not been able to locate a definitive birth certificate. So what do we know about Krempe? Krempe is now known for its well-preserved 19th century brick architecture, which means some of the buildings that now stand also stood in the time of Christoph. It was once a regional hub for trade and craftsmanship, particularly in shipbuilding and milling. Krempe is a town in Schleswig-Holstein. The closest major city is Hamburg. Schleswig-Holstein only becoming part of Germany in 1864. It has a long history of the Danes, Saxons and Franks struggling for control. In 1806 to 1815, the government of Denmark claimed Schleswig-Holstein to be part of the monarchy of Denmark. In 1813, King Frederick VI of Denmark joined arms with Napoleon. Yes, that Napoleon. But the war bankrupted the kingdom, and the Prussians, Swedish and Russian troops invaded Schleswig-Holstein. In 1848 to 1851, there was an uprising and war against Denmark. Denmark was victorious. There was much immigration from the area during this time. The majority of German immigrants went to USA. It was quicker and cheaper. But the gold rush in Victoria, Australia in 1854 was a precipitant for immigration to Australia. The Victorian gold rush was a pivotal moment in Australian history, which led to economic boom and population increase. The discovery of gold in Ballarat, Bendigo and Castlemaine attracted gold seekers from all over the world. Between 1852 and 1853, Ballarat was the richest goldfield in the world. People were awarded £1,000 for finding gold within 320 kilometres of Melbourne. Victoria's greatest yield for 1 year in 1856 was 94,000 kilos of gold extracted from the diggings. From 1851 to 1896, the Victorian Mines Department reported a total of 1,000,000 almost 900,000 kilograms of gold was mined in Victoria. By 1861, there were 10,000 Germans in Victoria, and in 1864, there were around 13 German associations. They were the largest ethnic group in the goldfields behind the British and the Chinese. Still in Germany, or perhaps Denmark, Christoph married Hannah, known as Anna. According to his death certificate, he married his wife in Hamburg, Germany, at the age of 38 years, around 1856 to 1857. It records his wife's name as Hannah Voller. Again, I've not been able to locate a marriage certificate. The documents in Australia all refer to Hannah as Anna and have lots of variations on her maiden name recorded. The death certificate suggests that Christoph immigrated to Australia, Victoria, around 1853, but there are no clear records of his travel around this time. We do know that the family arrived in Australia before 1857, as Matthew, possibly Martin, was born in Melbourne, Victoria. Hannah was born in Dunolly in Victoria in 1860. Amelia Henrietta Lange was born in 1862 in Moonlight Flat, Victoria, and Henry Peter Christopher was recorded as being born in MCCA, Victoria in 1865. Given information about where the family lived, I think that Henry was likely born in McCallum's Creek near Maryborough, Victoria. In 1868 and 1873, the Government Gazette shows an L. Lang as in the Receipt and Pay Office, Maryborough, for an outstanding account to call for the possible payment of accounts due to them at the pay office. So what were the goldfields like at this time? The Eureka Stockade had occurred in 1854. In the 1850s, the alluvial gold had run out and the miners were forced to search for gold underground. This deep mining of gold reefs was dangerous, and places such as Bendigo and Ballarat saw large numbers of miners who formed partnerships and syndicated to sink into deeper shafts. So we know from documents that Christoph lived in a number of locations, including McCallum's Creek, Dunley, which became Goldsborough, Moonlight Flat and 4 Mile Flat. These locations were all near the town of Maryborough, between Ballarat and Bendigo. By the mid-1850s, Maryborough had a post office, a hotel, hospital, courthouse, council chambers. The Maryborough Advertiser started in 1857. Dunolly's gold rush began in 1856 with a peak population of 12,000 people. In 1869, the Welcome Stranger, the largest gold nugget ever found, was discovered very close to Dunolly. It was 66 kilograms. The courthouse in Dunolly still stands from 1863. Moonlight Flats was a bustling hub of activity with thousands of hopeful miners. McCallum's Creek, located between Maryborough and Clunes, was renamed Craigie in 1875. The area was the site of significant gold discoveries. 4 Mile Creek, where Christoph resided at his death, was also in Craigie. The gold rush was marked by harsh living conditions, but Christoph was not just in the gold mines by himself. He had his family there. Children and presumably wives in the gold rush had it tough. Children were often reported working alongside adults, panning for gold and running errands or helping in the home. In 1852, there were almost 12,000 children on the Victorian goldfields. They carried wood, looked after the tents, or cared for the horses. Some children attended school, however the standard of education was poor, and the lifestyle on the gold mines reportedly encouraged resourcefulness, independence, courage and initiative. There was no free education in Victoria until 1870, so if you arrived in the 1850s, you could only be sent to school if your parents could afford this, and Christoph died a poor man. Reportedly, Maryborough was a hub of bushranger activity, particularly in the gold rush. Black Douglas robbed miners' empty tents during the day and shops at night. There are even tales that Australia's most famous bushranger, Ned Kelly, visiting Maryborough, but he was based in Beechworth, a significant distance away. Also, just after Christoph's death, the Clune uprising took place on the goldfields, 25 kilometres where the family resided. On 3 October 1872, Christoph was naturalised. His occupation was noted to be a miner. He lived at McCallum's Creek and he was born in Krempe, Holstein, Germany. He died on 8 August 1873. One of the family trees on Ancestry.com noted that Christoph died in a mining accident, and using the details we had about Christoph's death, I was able to obtain a copy of his death certificate and a number of newspaper articles about his death. I was able to confirm that Christoph died in a mining accident. His death certificate tells us that he died on the 8th of August 1873 at Bluch's can't read the word, in the county of Talbot. He was recorded with the name of Ludwig Christoph August Lange. His occupation was a miner. He was a male, 54 years of age. His cause of death, accidentally killed through a quantity of earth falling on him whilst mining. Verdict at inquest held before Mr. Laken Coroner, August 1873. His parents, Peter Lang labourer, Charlotte Lang, formerly Boyer. Informant read death, H. Lang brother from Mosquito. We know from his naturalisation certificate that his brother lived at Mosquito Flats. His death certificate indicates that he was buried at the Maryborough Cemetery on the 10th of August 1973, although there is no record of his burial at the cemetery. Thomas Casey was the undertaker. He was born in Germany. He has been living in Victoria for 20 years. At his death, he had 4 children, Matthew, aged 14 years, Hannah, 13 years, Amelia, 11 years, and Henry, 7 years of age. His death seems to have been initially reported in the Maryborough Standard, and then the story was repeated nationally in newspapers across Australia. Unfortunately, I cannot find a copy of the original newspaper article in the Standard. Before we go into details of his death, I'll tell you a little bit about Bletcher's Reef. Bletcher's Reef was discovered in 1858. The prospectors were working at a depth of around 120 feet or 35 metres. For 12 years, the site was steadily worked for quartz mining along a reef under a cooperative system by small parties. There is evidence still today of mining using horse-powered whims. A whim was a device that hauled ore up a shaft. It was a vertically mounted drum to which a rope was attached and then passed and pulled over a pulley down the shaft. It was wound by a horse led around a circular path. Steam-powered mining began in the 1860s with the sinking of a new shaft of over 400 feet, around 120 metres deep. This shaft was abandoned in 1869 due to defective and inefficient machinery. In 1875, the Great Extended Company was reported to have resumed operation at Bletcher's Reef, which had remained idle for some time. If the times in the records are correct, no company was working Bletcher's Reef at the time of Christoph's death. However, the record suggests that men continued to be employed to work on abandoned reef mining operations, and the reports in the newspaper that Christoph had been employed at the Bletcher's Reef Company at the time of his death. The Argus, a newspaper in Melbourne, tells us that a fatal accident occurred at the claim of Bletcher's Reef Company mine in Marlborough last Tuesday. The deceased was Lange, who lived at 4 Mile Flat, was working one of the old drives when suddenly the top gave way and falling debris partially covered him. The accident occurred at 3 p.m. When assistance arrived, he was found with his head and lower parts of his body free, and he was able to speak to his mates. His mates tried to do everything in their power to remove him, but as fast as the earth was taken away, it fell in and filled the breach. By 6 p.m, Lange could see that there was no hope and was reported as saying, "Give my farewell to my wife and children, I'm going to die." This was the last time that he was seen or heard, as a large fall of earth came down completely covering him. His mates tried to get his body. One man was forced to stop after 14 hours of constant work. When the newspaper article was reported, his body had not been recovered. A new drive will need to be constructed to rescue the body. Lange was a quiet, steady man and lived in the district for many years. He leaves a wife and, we believe, 7 children, the oldest about 14 years. Christoph, in fact, only had 4 children. I think where the 7 children came from was that his youngest son, Henry, my second great-grandfather, was 7 years of age at his death. What makes the matter more sad is that only lately he had come to work in the claim and to be in steady receipt of wages. An advertiser, which may have directly quoted the Maryborough Standard, said, "The unfortunate victim was a German by the name of Lange, who was a well-known resident of 4 Mile Flat, Craigie. He was employed to work in an old drive. Whilst employed, the head of the drive caved in, pinning the middle section of his body, leaving his head and legs free. It was found impossible to extract him. Efforts most untiring and energetic were made to remove the earth, but so great was the pressure that meant no sooner was the earth removed, another fell instantly. The disaster occurred about 3 p.m. in the afternoon, and the poor fella lingered in that position for 3 hours, suffering intense agony. He was reported saying, 'I know I must die. Give my blessing to my poor wife and family,' shortly after he expired. Heroic efforts were made at the imminent threat of life to rescue the deceased. Lange was in indigent, poor circumstances and leaves a wife and a family of 5 to 6 young children." I hope you enjoyed the story of Christoph Ludwig August Lange. If you have any further information, please contact me. This video was created for family history purposes. There are no family documents in relation to Christoph, so this information has all been obtained from the internet, from ancestry.com, and there has been direct quotes and pictures taken from the internet.